Good morning, guys. How is everyone? Everyone well?
Thank you.
Good to get everyone out bright and early this morning. Wondering what that sounds like. This is actually the second of these sessions that we've hosted. As you all know, we predominantly spend all our time with the founders of the UK. So we think it is massively important to run sessions just like this, where we bring the bigger brands together to discuss actually how do we serve these brands in an authentic and importantly an impactful way. And I think working with SMEs brings a real responsibility to do just that. So thank you for joining us this morning. We will probably cover a whole range of topics today, but we're happy to take this wherever you'd like to, wherever we feel everyone to get the most value. But where can we share both the challenges but also advice with each other of, again, how we can serve SMEs in the most impactful way. So I think just to get to know everyone around the table, it'd be great if we can go around and introduce ourselves, and just to let us know a bit more about you. It'd be good to hear, what's your favourite SME at the moment? So who do you idolise from a business point of view, or who are you a personal customer of that you're really switched on to? So to give you just a bit more thinking time, I'll go first. So I'm James Sutcliffe of the Founding Network. One of the SMEs that I'm loving at the minute is Nourished. So Melissa and the team there, they create personalised 3D printed vitamins. I don't know if you've seen them, but now I've mentioned them, you'll see them all over the tubes and the trains and wherever else. But the really impressive thing about them is they not only 3D print the vitamins themselves, they actually build the 3D printers. So they don't rely on anyone externally. So when everyone else is dealing with supply chain issues, they don't have any of that. So yeah, massively impressed by Melissa and the team over at Nourished. And I'll go to my left. Okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nick, Commercial Director for CashPlus, the digital bank, focused mainly on SMEs, funnily enough. So yeah, great to have a chance to meet you all. I might need a bit more thinking time on the my favourite SME. We've got a lot of SME customers. I wouldn't like to offend any of our SME customers. So.
I noticed that, so we did similar last time. I said my favourite, and I had to stop myself and like that, just so people in the room. I can't say that. Yeah. So we'll keep going down then.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Divya. I'm at Silicon Valley Bank. It's a bank that we just cater for tech entrepreneurs and VCs and PEs. Prior to SVB, I was at KPMG, started up with audit, then I moved over to our startup teams, and I led on our investor relations there, and I really supported companies as they go through their fundraising journey. Yeah, I don't have much time to think about my favourite SME, but one that comes to mind is Peppy. It's a company that's combating stigma around menopause and fertility issues in the workplace.
Very cool.
Hi, I am Natasha. I'm on the partnerships team at the Founding Network. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. My favourite startup at the moment, slightly biased, she featured on our documentary Founders Changing the World. She also spoke at one of our events recently. So it's a lady called Tess Kosad, and she's founded a company called Bay Fertility, which essentially is making the infertility treatment and process a little bit more human by taking it in your homes rather than being really clinical. And obviously it's a really difficult time for people that are going through that. So yeah, watch this space. Sounds like she's scaling quite a bit, so it's one to watch.
Hi everyone, my name is William. I'm with Deloitte Ventures. So I look after sort of communications, marketing, partnerships at Deloitte Ventures. And basically what Ventures does within Deloitte is sort of being the engine for innovation in-house for Deloitte. I mean, KPMG probably has a similar sort of accelerator in-house. And yeah, just looking forward to making new friends and new contacts. My favorite startup, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's the first one that came to mind. It's a company called Beam. I don't know if anyone's, yeah. So they're kind of like trying to close the poverty gap in the UK by sort of creating employment opportunities for people that were either sleeping rough or homeless. So great startup to look at.
Yeah, my name's Dave. I have somebody's book here. Somebody's been writing it, so if you're losing it. I'm with Dell. I run our small business sales organization here in Europe. Who's my favorite small business? That's a big, interesting question. I guess from a personal point of view, we've moved here to the UK 2 years back. And we've had amazing service by so many small businesses in, just super sharp, super, reactive at what they do. And from as a company gusto, I just think, I don't know how they make money, because the economics of the thing, it is so, it's obviously a scale-based business and that sort of thing, but I think they do amazing work.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe Tagabi and I work at Cisco. So I'm in the SME team, and my role specifically is just developing route to markets. So I look after e-commerce and digital sales. It is an interesting question, because I think actually what it highlights is that, me as an individual, am I investing in that small business, or am I endorsing the big brands, as a shopper myself? So I think it's really interesting to be at an event such as this, to have that visibility of those small businesses, so we can invest more as individuals, because we're just so caught up into marketing, aren't we? It's just so easy to go on Amazon, it's so easy to go down to Tesco, so it's like, how can we get them more on a platform where we can invest in them? And that's a little bit about me.
Hi, morning. I'm Tanya. I work for SMEs Want, leading the marketing team. We're a mid-tier accounting firm, work almost exclusively with SMEs. My favourite SME, I would say I love all our clients. They're all fantastic and have their own stories and journeys. But we're working with a really amazing tech company, medical tech company called Biotech at the moment, who are creating a whole range of new drugs and products through mushrooms. They grow their own sort of organic mushroom products, and really, really kind of on the fringe of kind of experimenting with that. Really interesting story. They're really inspirational. Love Nourished. I was actually doing a sales job on them to someone the other day, just saying, you've got to go look at this business. So
every customer seems to be a massive advocate, don't they?
Amazing. Yeah, I don't know if it's just you did a great video, but amazing business.
I need to check them out. Morning everyone, hi, my name is Katie. I'm the marketing manager for Pleo. We are a Danish startup with humble beginnings. We're essentially a spend management solution. We help a company with managing their expenses. In terms of a company I really admire, it's also Beam.
Nice.
To steal William's comment. They're also a Pleo customer, I'd like to add. I think good to keep it in the family, but yeah, I really admire the work that they're doing. And that reminds me I need to film a customer story and really tell about their user journey.
My name's Amber. I work for a company called Plaid. We're like a open banking payment provider based in the States, and we just launched in Europe a couple of years ago. So I'm on the marketing team there, and I think does Monzo count as an SME? They're pretty big, but they really have. I think their marketing was brilliant. The bright card. I think the way that they manage to inform you of your personal financial spending and categorization is really been effective at helping me to budget, and it's really just changed my life as a consumer. And they're also a customer, so it's just cool to see the fintech ecosystem developing, I guess, and then be a first-hand beneficiary of that. I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks.
Morning everyone. Mike, I'm a director of sales at Sellers Funding. We provide finance and sort of other financial solutions, mainly to e-commerce sellers and D2C businesses. So fast growth, we love that. We only provide debt finance, kind of non-dilutive solutions to them. In terms of my favourite SME at the moment, I think it's got to be Circa 5000, formerly known as Ticker. I think they're really interesting. They're sort of, one of the pioneers of the robo-investing into the ESG space. Really interesting the way that they categorise their risk, but also the way that they do the allocation of the investments as well. I've met one of the founders there, really interesting guys, ex-RBS. I also invested in them kind of in their most recent round. Disclaimer. Let's check them out.
Hi, I'm Georgia. I'm the Partnerships Manager at the Founding Network. So I'd say my favourite SME, I was going to say Bayer Fertility, but Natasha's already said it, so I won't repeat myself. I'd say Wallpaint. They starred in our in our docu-series. So Danny, he's a really engaged community member. He's just got such a fantastic story. They basically create makeup specifically for men, and it really kind of started all from his body dysmorphia, I believe. So a really interesting story, and if you get any spare time to watch the docu-series, and it's really fantastic. Yeah.
Good plug there too, I like
that.
Hi, I'm Kate. I work for a company called Moneypenny. So we'll answer your phone if you can't. So if you're an SME and you're too busy doing other stuff, we'll answer your phone. If you're a Magic Circle law firm and you want to outsource your reception, we'll do that too. I don't know, my favourite SME. So I am part of a organisation called Be the Business, which supports SMEs. So I have a mentee who runs a balloon company in Rotherham. And if any of you are based in the Northwest and would like balloons for a company event, please use us, because she's had a really difficult time during the pandemic.
Did they deliver to London at all? Or?
If it's a big enough job, she'll do anything, right?
I'll get you.
We used her at Moneypenny, and she did this amazing we've got a tree house in the office, and she did this amazing art installation, so all the balloons looked like it was the tree house was going through to the sky. So she's amazing, but Northwest based.
Are we just gonna glaze over that? You've got a tree house in the office.
Yes, we have a tree house in the office.
This is tech, you know.
Hi, I'm Andrew Stevens. I look after small and medium business for Vodafone in the UK. So we've been putting a lot of focus and a lot of energy into the small business space over the last few years. We've been doing a lot of new platforms to support small businesses. I guess I should say that my favourite SME is Stephen Bartlett. He's our big ambassador at the moment, and he's probably become quite mainstream with Dragon's Den and things of that nature. A frustratingly bright guy. We've done quite a few conversations with him. He's frustratingly bright and sort of author, podcaster, etc., etc. But actually, if you go beyond him, we deal with a lot of small businesses, and I was speaking to James a second ago. Actually, the thing that inspires me is the small businesses who have had to pivot so frequently at the moment. You've had Brexit, you've had the pandemic, you've now got war. I was speaking to a guy the other day who runs a company called Please Cakes. He was a decorator. He decided to start making artisan cheesecakes. Started building up through just social media. Suddenly got to a scale where he could then buy a site down in Reigate, started employing people. And Brexit hit, which made things complicated. Then the pandemic hit. He's pivoted his entire business to frozen cheesecakes, and then started, sort of pivoting again as we've gone through the next stage of the pandemic. So it's just that constant iteration and pivoting, which is really, quite inspiring. And the agility that they've shown, the resilience that they've shown is, what impressed me.
Yeah, very cool. So, look, clearly quite a range of businesses in the room, but I think a lot of similarities in that we all seem to have that passion to help SMEs reach their full growth potential. So I think there's a lot for us to share here today. I should say as we get started, please dig in. There is so much food, so please eat as we go, and we'll keep this a very relaxed conversation. But I think why don't we start this at the beginning with how we actually set up for having an SME team within our organisations and how we get that moving in the first place. And Amber, you're probably one of the ones with the latest formation of a team here in the UK. So what was your focus when you first started here in the UK as a business?
I think we took a couple years to develop products that were specific to in our geo expansion strategy. We needed a couple years of just steeping ourselves in the market. In the US, SMEs are a huge part of our customer base. I'd say they're 80% of our customer base. And we have a self-service funnel where people can just sign up without talking to anyone to become a customer. But in Europe, we actually couldn't do that because of risk and in fintech, I feel there's just such different regulation. So we're working on that right now. That's a really interesting problem. How do you scale and reach small businesses effectively? Really just how do you scale with the regulation, in the financial tech world. because like human capital is expensive and you need technology to be able to scale, and like risk and compliance and regulatory and legal are all bottlenecks in being able to reach those SMEs in a way that makes sense for our business to like spend time delivering to SMEs. I'm curious like if anyone's sort of like figured out the balance there, like of like dedicating time and investing in SMEs, even though you know the immediate ROI is like not there, and like it's maybe 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100 that like really moonshots as a customer with you. And like, yeah, I think we've taken that investment sort of, like we focused on them for a year or two, and then we sort of pulled back a little bit until we can answer that question. Like we're trying to answer that question now until we before we can double down and scale there.
And I guess one of the biggest things, particularly when you're starting, or if it's a bigger business that is now pushing into SMEs, is actually how do we define what an SME is? If we're talking about is everyone below 250 employees, a one-man band is very different, someone with 5 employees to 50 employees to whatever else it may be. So I don't know if anyone wants to chip in with how do you define it, and how do you decide where actually as a business you can add the most value?
Yeah, just commenting on, funny enough, when you circulated the question before in terms of the biggest challenge, that I think for us that is probably the biggest challenge, because we're in the SME banking space. But for us, an SME, I mean, our profile of SMEs could be anything from, it's pretty much the UK population of businesses, so 95% are less than 10 employees, 75% are 0 or 1. Then you've got that 5 or 10% of big companies, and the requirements they've got for banking are massively different. So you're trying to cope with the scale of customers, the micro businesses who've just got one guy who needs to access his banking on the mobile phone and make a couple of payments a month, pay a few invoices, and it's fairly straightforward. And then you've got the other end where you've got, they're perhaps running payroll, they've got multiple directors, so from regulatory and compliance point of view, you're trying to sort of manage that. And their service requirements are different. Some of them just want to access everything over mobile phone, others want to talk to someone or see someone face to face. And we're sort of relatively early in that sort of growth stage, so trying to accommodate all of that is a challenge,
And do you try to accommodate all of it, or is it?
I mean, for us, I think we started off very much on the micro business end. So we're now finding we get more and more established and larger businesses coming to us. So we sort of built ourselves around volume, if you like. So we're signing up whatever sort of 7,000-8,000 SME customers a month, and we were built to do that. We were probably less built in the early days to service these companies who are employing a couple hundred people, who might still be defined as an SME. And that's our challenge, is trying to make sure we're able to service those customers who've got more complex requirements from a servicing point of view and from a regulatory point of view. So trying to add that into our operation is a challenge.
Has anyone else been through that, where you've tried to effectively cater for everyone, and over time you've narrowed that down and found your sweet spot? I don't know, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting, because you can define it, can't you, by sort of turnover and by number of employees, but I think we tried to do that for many, many years, and I think what we realised is you've really also got to look at where they are in their life cycle and kind of their appetite for, for growth, there's a point, I think, where they start to become complex businesses, and for us that's kind of the sweet spot. We found that's where we can add the most value, that's where we can make the biggest impact, is when they're at that point where issues start to get really more complex, and it's almost that moving from a sort of big small business to a small big business. So I think that becomes a variable we really look at what is going on, where are they in that growth cycle, how complex is their business, how difficult are the problems they have that we need to find solutions for.
It's
that sort of 5 to 30 million sort of range. I think that really is the sweet spot.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you mentioned that. So as you can imagine, we have a ton of big businesses coming to us and they're saying, look, this is our sweet spot, these are the types of brands we want to help. So in our heads, they need to have X amount of turnover. But in reality, when you strip that back, it's not necessarily the turnover that dictates if they need the help or not. A lot of the time they have massive funding, they might be pre-launch and definitely need the marketing services or comm services or whatever it is. but if you're just looking at turnover, you're going to miss a ton of those brands that have the money and the need. I saw a couple of other people nodding along to narrowing that down.
I was nodding. I was just thinking a lot about your point about these kind of like one-man band shows, and one thing that we did at Pleo, essentially, if you can imagine, we're kind of like Monzo for businesses, but it's like prepaid cards, they can monitor all their spending. We decided to just give it for free for up to like 6 users. So a lot of those one-man bands who maybe are in an accelerator program, who've just received a round of funding, who need to account for like all of their expenses, they can now do that with Pleo, and it saves them hiring a CFO, for example. So that was us listening to our customers, being like, what do you need? Okay, let's take away the barrier of having to like pay for this, and then when you grow and scale with us, then you can like move on to more premium version of the product and start paying your bills with it and things like that. So yeah, I think that was like an example of, we went straight to the customer and asked them like, what do you want? And we're like, okay, that sounds hard, but like we'll try it. So now we're trialing this free experience, and it's been good, because from a marketing standpoint, we're like, well, get started today for free. Try and, it's almost like having a CFO that's in your pocket, in a way.
Nice. Do you use that as a tagline?
No, but I just... I'm going to write that down. I'm going to call up Copenhagen. I've got our next campaign. Yeah.
CFO as a service as well.
No offense to CFOs, like as in you still absolutely need them, because they're our target audience. They are the people who manage the platform, is what I like to say. Yeah. But yeah, just it helps when you're at that size to get to the next level, so you can grow out your finance team.
Makes sense. Chloe, I think
Yeah.
you were about to say something.
Did a lot of nodding. I was like, but yeah, I think typically Cisco, we're seen as that big enterprise sort of space. That's our sort of sweet spot, B2B, and we have a dedicated team where SME is actually really important to us. But it's just that presence of that they aren't aware that we have a specially designed portfolio for them. We have we sell to our partners, so we don't sell direct. So we have this whole partner ecosystem, and that's when we scale through the likes of Vodafone as service providers, and that's what my role is to be present and develop those route to markets of where they are, working with the likes of Amazon, such as yourselves as organisations to show up, because there's actually a lot of stuff that we do to help support SMEs, be the business. We partner with them in terms of creating labs so that they can get skilled up. And yeah, I guess it's just really interesting in terms of that scale, because my team, we're sort of split where we've got the sales teams, and that's 50k up to 250 in order to really be that high touch account manager. And we had that big question, like that sort of 50k, how do we help those small businesses that are less than 5 employees? And I was reading in the Financial Times that the financial help to grow scheme from Rishi Sunak's only a tenth of that target within 6 months. It's only hit a 10th. So it's like that financial support's really key for small businesses, but there's not been the uptake. And it's down to that criteria, and that's hard for even the government to really build out that criteria, because we're not hitting the nail on the head by helping them. And financial support is really key to them, so it's like, why? Why is there not a big uptake, really? Sorry, I probably derailed the conversation to something else.
And Dave, you were sort of saying that actually at Dell you can cater for all size businesses, and it's a bit broader. So I guess
it's similar to Cisco in a lot of things. But if you take, from Dell Technologies' perspective, we cater from the individual consumer all the way through to the very biggest companies globally. So if we kind of look at the SMB business, or SB, we don't try to, we look at them in terms of their customer journey, right? And at what touch point would a company come into the organization? And then how do you build a coverage model that can scale and is cost, and is cost beneficial to actually covering SBs. The challenge is SBs buy one machine, and they might buy one machine once every 2 to 3 years. So what do you do with a person that buys one machine every second or third year? What you can't do is put an account manager on them and ask the person to visit somebody who says, I'd like a machine. You can't scale. So how do you offer sales coverage, advice, technical advice, And then how do we build a community around SMEs specifically in terms of some of the community work that we do, and then within some of the influencer communities and organizations that actually are focused on building up that SME business. So we have a multiple touch points kind of strategy. I know, Chloe spoke about Cisco as a channel only. We do, come in online, you can buy online, you can call a call center, you can click, you can chat, you can, we've launched WhatsApp. WhatsApp is huge in Brazil as an example, where people will transact massively through WhatsApp, which is foreign to me because I couldn't imagine buying my company's IT requirements through WhatsApp. So we kind of are continuously looking at it, and we were in the space of, well, SBs were 99 and below, and then it went to medium business, but that's morphed and changed quite significantly down the line of saying, what is their current and potential future net worth as an organization, and then how do you look at those companies in terms of their journey through a partnership with us as an organization, right? So a lot of BI in the background kind of trying to figure out, and then you build your coverage model, because as your opportunity grows and gets bigger, we obviously are able to do much more face-to-face, we're able to start dedicating resource, etc. And obviously the biggest companies have people that only service those individual companies. So there's a huge amount of work around how do you drive productivity, but how do you offer personalized service?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that poses is as teams grow, as you go from, again, whether it's a one-man band or five, is who you should actually speak to about whatever part of the business you need to speak to. Because, of course, at the beginning, the founder takes everything, and then over time, that is delegated to team members. And some of the time, you'll find you'll actually go to the founder and they're not sure where it sits because it's a new thing within their business. So how's everyone found that? Has that been a challenge for people?
It's normally the CFOs of the founder, isn't it? That's what I found anyway. We obviously do, providing finance to mainly SMEs, and if we're talking outside of the founder, it's normally finance director, CFO, whoever's taking over, and they tend to work in concert with each other, don't they? Anything finance related. So.
Yeah, I guess a little more straightforward in your world, knowing that's
pretty straightforward for me.
Yeah. Anyone else had challenges with that, or have they found that fairly straightforward?
I think probably we're a bit like in the banking world. It tends to be the sort of founder owner and sort of finance contact, but you need then, as the business grows, you need to be able to sort of cater for multi-user contacts. In the banking world, it then, once an organisation gets bigger, you'll have department heads and different functional people who need to access your service for different things, and so it's just building out that level of complexity that you need to support. Your main contact may still be the CFO or the founder or someone, but it's just adding that layer of complexity as they grow.
We've taken sort of like a data-driven approach at like analyzing the titles of people given certain company segments, and then successful like opportunities or conversions, and then taking a look at like how that differs per employee band of companies that we commercially sell into. So like that's been really useful, I think, because then as a marketer I can take that data and go find more people like that and know that that's like the key decision maker, or know that for companies like 50 to 200, it's actually like a payments person that we're speaking to, not like a CEO or like a head of, I don't know. I feel like titles are so ambiguous, and there's like so many ways to navigate org structures that looking at like the metadata and being able to synthesize via like, okay, well if it contains this keyword for this employee band, then I'm like in the clear. That's like the score A. Or like there's tools out there that like make it really simple, I think, but use your data specifically.
Absolutely, and I think that use of data and the way people set up their teams and things, the other challenges, that massively differs geographically as well. And I know from a lot of big brands around the room, we have big job titles where we cover EMEA, say, but actually we need to be hyper localized. So I'm guessing at Vodafone that's a bit of a challenge with the size that you guys are.
Yeah, I think we're having to get more and more targeted. I think we've got lots of solutions. I think in terms of job titles, I think our mobile solutions tend to go to office managers, whereas our tech solutions, as we're bridging into more tech and more digital solutions, go to CIOs, and it varies as we scale. But I think what we're finding is that it's becoming more geographic centric, and we talked about the different lenses. We take a sort of size, a vertical, and an operational maturity lens in terms of how we segment. Now we're also taking a geographic lens on that. So in things like the Midlands, there's 15,000 health tech businesses employing 200,000 people. And so, why would we not do something of that nature to support those businesses there? So we're trying to be proactive in that space. In the same way, fintech in London, because there are certain growth verticals that we're now trying to be more proactive around. Because I think the risk is that we have solutions and we're trying to get support, but getting cut through in a crowded market with lots of people trying to offer. We give a lot of stuff away free. And actually giving stuff away free is quite hard at the moment. There's a lot of stuff out there and just getting cut through. So we're offering free digital advice, we're giving away free broadband, free digital apps, etc., just trying to help small businesses go to the next step, but actually talking in a language that they understand, in the right places, through the right mediums. I think it's something that we're having to evolve, because we're a big corporate. We deal with a lot of big corporates. We're sort of seen in that that sort of way. So it's quite shit for us at the moment. But we're getting traction. I mean, the one-man band type operation we do very well in. We've got really good coverage in there. It's the 10 to 250 space, which is where our penetration isn't what we want it to be, but there is growth there. The other thing that's quite interesting, which I don't know whether other people have seen, is they're predicting there's going to be 3 million side hustles started in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating. You had 800,000 startups last year and then 3 million predicted side hustles. I mean, it's just a different ballgame now in terms of small businesses. So that's a fascinating challenge.
Do you think that'll help? I just wanted to interject on the previous point, if that's okay, on the realizing that offering things for free is on itself kind of like an uphill battle. So at Deloitte and within Ventures, we have an external ventures team that kind of scouts startups and to see how SMEs, how we could possibly sort of work with them, maybe even sort of integrate them. And so there's always this kind of buy versus build conundrum within accelerators. And so this is kind of where we sit. And so oftentimes when we tell them we can offer you perhaps with some exposure across our network, marketing, these kind of things, it's just not enough. It really is, we want to know exactly which introductions you can make, which sort of like which pitch we can be involved in. It has to be concrete because these startups are bootstrapped a lot of times and they need actual sort of like not just support to kind of like better them as entrepreneurs, but really to kind of like at the end of the day draw the line between that kind of support and actually what's going to be sellable for me. So
what we see a lot from our founders is, and with that, as you said, there's a lot of support available that people almost can't give away. But one of the big things that we keep hearing is that no matter how big an SME gets, they almost just don't believe they can afford to advertise on TV or work with the world's biggest law firm or whatever it may be. So I think a big part of that is creating the human element behind the big brand, where, and this is what we were speaking about before, where they feel like they can come to you to talk to you for a bit of advice or without feeling like they need to bring their checkbook every time or they're going to be roped into something. So it's almost how do you create that human, meaningful relationship rather than it just being Deloitte is talking to you or Vodafone is talking to you. Instead it's William speaking to you. And I know we've spoken a bit about communities and things, and I think you were speaking a little bit about it, but how have we gone about that? What's worked for different people?
We have we globally have it's an interesting acronym. It's called DWEN, D-W-E-N. It's Dell's Women Entrepreneurial Network. It's been going now for almost 10 years, 75,000 plus female-owned businesses, global network, and it's all around linking female startups and female-run businesses in a community, and that's been unbelievably successful. And what do we get out of it as a company? It's not one of the challenges is where's the order? You know, do you do things to get in order, or do you do things to create, you know, build a base that you will then benefit out of? And Duena's been unbelievably successful, and we launched here in the UK, and almost 1,000 companies now already in that network. And what we try to then do is try to connect that network with other influencers, networks, etc., to continue building out that community. And I think we as large companies can have a big impact in doing that without necessarily saying, well, I'm going to do something to get an order in 3, 6, 9 months' time. You know, but if we can build a community, you know, SMBs, we were talking about the Middle East. All right, how do you know, the Middle East is way too reliant on oil and government type businesses, and what they don't have is this big, thriving SMB business environments. And all successful economies really are built from SMBs upwards. So, you know, we do have I think we have a requirement of all big companies to be involved in this sort of space, and how do we go and get that done? And women in, you know, female entrepreneurs and that, and if you look at the percentages, you know, it's still lower than men, right? The fallout in terms of talent in large businesses, and I guess in the SMB space as well, of females is too high. When, you know, we lose a lot of talent when women leave and potentially start a family or whatever, and how do we create mechanisms to bring them back into large businesses, but then also support potentially into in the SMB space, the startups.
Absolutely. Anyone else had any experience of trying to create that community and really, I suppose, humanising your own brands?
I think, you know, we tried a few years ago, and we know what works. You know, when you bring a group of owners together in a room, you know, that creates something really special. It creates a really great dynamic. And if you can kind of find a way to short circuit, you know, the very long rigmarole of kind of the challenges that they've got to deal with. So if someone's looking to expand abroad, and you can put them with an owner who's done it and is willing to share that experience and just kind of almost hold their hand through that process, building that kind of community really, really works. But it's, you know, we did it, and we did it for a while, but to sustain it is really hard, because these people are just so time poor, and, you know, to kind of lean on that time and make it kind of work for the long term is incredibly challenging. But it's fantastic, and I'm sure you've seen the same experience in what you do. When it works, right? And it gives birth to all sorts of other things, you know, that extend beyond that, and those owners almost create their own ecosystems, and other things spring out of that. So I guess it can work, but I don't suppose we've quite cracked how you sustain it and keep it working.
Yeah. So I was going to say, we have found that it's not quite community, but we found that I think highlights the importance of that network. We've been quite focused on building out a partner network across the UK. So probably half of our SME customers come to us through that, I think I was saying to you before, through that sort of network of relationships. So as a bank, you know, startups, who are saying a lot of startups, the first thing they think of is going to register their domain, or they go to a firm of accountants, or they go, there's a whole range, you know, a bank is potentially the last organisation. It's the boring end of setting up a business. So actually being part of that community and that network of complementary businesses, we found is quite valuable, because customers, I think, you know, they don't always necessarily think of, you know, of getting certain services first. So I think that connectivity within the ecosystem is very valuable.
Yeah, well, I think that allows you, as you sort of pointed to there, to talk about your different services. And Tanya, I think you'd mentioned it in an email before we came, that actually a lot of the time SMEs come to big businesses thinking about what that big business is known for by the general public, when actually that is not the service you think is best for them. So can I explain that one a little bit?
Yeah, I think, you know, for accounting firms, I think it's quite challenging, because, you know, we do what it says on the tin, right? And that's what a business owner will primarily initially need you for, is kind of tax accounting advice. But really, the challenge for us is that's kind of a given. The real value we bring is kind of, 90 years of experience in working with these kinds of owners. We own our own businesses, so we go through it personally as well as we do, in an advisor role. And it's trying to unlock how you kind of strip away that old perception that that's what advisory firms or accounting firms do, is just the technical stuff. When it's, I don't know, we really struggle with that. How do you create that, at start point, at the top of the funnel? How do you kind of shift that perception that really the value add and why you would choose to work with firms that, whether it's law firms, accounting firms, any kind of advisor, is, how do you shift that from just a technical solution to understanding that with their support you can actually get where you're going faster, solve problems quicker? I don't know, we struggle with that massively.
Yeah, well, you must have had that with, you must have had that with Deloitte.
Yeah, so we kind of Deloitte Ventures is sort of like, I guess, stuck in the middle in an interesting way. So on the one hand, we try to address that journey by working with the likes of other organizations like Conception X. So Conception X works closely with PhD students in order to sort of come up with ideas that are kind of like tech driven. So not just keep it stuck in theory, but really kind of action it. And we've supported them from a mentorship perspective and all that. And I think it's been great because a lot of practitioners across Deloitte kind of still consider, as I would say, innovation kind of beside a desk. So kind of bringing this as real, impactful sort of partnership and association with students that are on a growth trajectory was really, really good. And the other bit I think is also that, to your point, I think we now have this shift away from time and materials towards sort of, I think, what our CEO said is by 2027 we want 30% of our revenue to be asset enabled. So there's a real now buy-in from leadership. Okay, we need to make a bigger impact than just providing advisory, but we're actually adding value by actually creating solutions that we can we can not only sell to customers but also sort of package in collaboration with startups, with the ecosystem to help us actually build it. We can't build it ourselves. We can't just be reliant on our own in-house talent. We need to accept that, and we need to kind of, in order for us to achieve that 2027 ambition, we need to be more open to external partnerships as well.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And Kate, I know you've obviously worked in this space for a while now, from GoDaddy to Moneypenny. So what have you seen as the real challenges of getting in front of an educated SME?
Completely different businesses. So GoDaddy actually only want micro SMEs. They're a volume player, all their products and services are really, once you get bigger than 5, right, you probably will move your hosting to a different provider. You might go to AWS or wherever. So that's why they're sort of supporting that side hustle growth, right? They want people to have multiple jobs and set up multiple businesses and domains. Moneypenny, thanks. Different story. It's and we go from micros, and we'll sell them a business phone number, all the way up to 20-person teams managing Magic Circle switchboards. So that's like the full breadth of B2B marketing. And we have to have different strategies to tackle each one. We actually do vertical marketing at the enterprise end, so law firm marketing, accountancy, property, estate agency is a big sector for us. And then the usual Google at the bottom end of the market. That's how we...
And what are the challenges there then? Is it actually just being able to cater for, almost back to the beginning of today's conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a product challenge. It's a suite of products that you need to manage that range of businesses, and it's an account management challenge. How do you differentiate between, key account managers at the top and a more sort of FAQ type service at the bottom to manage that scalability.
Yeah. Your current business and obviously the one prior are really well set up, aren't they, in terms of speed, so being able to match the speed of startups. But I think that's a tough one for probably a lot of the guys in the room who have processes to follow that have the backing of the big business behind them, and actually that slows things down. So, and again, we mentioned small businesses are pivoting so quickly. How do you keep up with them?
So we do have a lot of sort of legacy infrastructure and process and bureaucracy, and actually what we're finding, to your point earlier, is the only way that we can actually keep up is to partner and act as more of a consortium-based methodology, because otherwise we're trying to adapt and build at a pace that they're just, by the time we've got it built, it's just 12, 18 months down the line, and their needs have changed. So we are far more receptive to partnerships. We are getting better at being a partner. I think we have traditionally not been a fantastic partner, but I think we're getting better at doing that. We're working with far more small businesses themselves and looking at what the reciprocal benefits could be of working with small businesses directly, in terms of we can give them scale, we can give them reach through our platforms, and they can give us a lot of advice. So I think being open to those partnerships at different levels is what's enabling us to go quicker. That and a far more focused approach to AI-driven data analytics, and sort of being far more data-led and far more aware that actually what we see in 1 minute is changing a few months later, and we need to be far more receptive to that. So I think we haven't. I'm not suggesting that means we've got it right. I'm suggesting that we're working very hard on it, but we've still got a lot to do, in my view.
Yeah, and that must be an inherent challenge. I'm looking at this corner of the room in the finance world, where processes have to be there and just tend to be a bit slower.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the finance world can struggle with is getting away from that transactional relationship. You want to have a long-term view. You want to be able to provide, facilities or partnerships or whatever you can to someone from almost day dot up until you take them to the stars. That's something that all finance companies should be looking to do. I don't think enough of them do that. I think a lot of them are like, get in, get out. You manage to get your money out, great. But at Sellers we do take that long-term view, and I think the way that we sell against some of the other players in the market is very much, we provide a much more flexible financing structure. If you've ever spoken to any of the other e-commerce lenders in the space, they kind of sell flexibility, but actually it's inherently inflexible if you're a growing business. You end up signing up for a facility that you think should take you sort of 9-10 months to pay back, but if you're growing 50% year on year, you actually pay the same flat fee on something that takes 6 months to repay. So on an annualized basis, you're paying double the amount that you thought you were. So there's a lot of education that sort of we're doing. But I thought that what was quite interesting in terms of the themes that everyone was talking about is the understanding that everyone needs to be able to provide additional services and partners from their ecosystem. And it overlays really interestingly with that idea of community. And having a really strong community means that they're more likely to take your partnership referrals, and if you've got a strong network of partners, they're going to be much more likely to come back to you for all of those kind of things. And it's that almost like positive, whirlpool of that environment that I think, to your point of the Nourish business that's looking really interesting. That's probably the new thing that everyone's after, like especially in the VC space. If you've got a strong community, that's so much value that I think it's kind of gone past looking for that sort of viral network effect now. It's like community, partner ecosystem, how can that sustain kind of, I suppose, repeat customer behaviors and all of these things moving forward. I think it's a really interesting thing that's happening now. I don't know whether it's like a COVID effect or something that's brought it forward.
When we hosted a similar session to this last time, I can't remember who said it, but effectively they were saying that they now view the purchase of their product, the ticket price to enter their community, rather than it being the product is the end of it. So I think it's that community of people that are already customers, but also, as you're saying, the sort of wider pool as well that you can draw in there.
So it's added value all the way, isn't it? I think it's super valuable.
Absolutely. Nivea, from your point of view.
Thank you. So just going back to building that community and having that personable approach, I would say SVB, like where we actually tend to get a lot of market shares because from our competitors, like we'll often get like founders coming to us saying, I never get to speak to anyone at so-and-so bank, and they get really frustrated with that because banking just in itself, no matter where you go, is a very frustrating process. So because at SVB, like if you're a founder, you will get a dedicated RM on your account. So I will be speaking to founders day in and day out and speaking to them about their frustrations. And I think that's why they really like us, is because they can have that contact. Sometimes they just want to vent to someone and we provide that for them. But we also try to build that community. And I think going back to the previous point where we said, like, even if you give stuff for free, some founders just don't want it because there's so much out there. And I think that's why even if you look at VCs, they are trying to build these like really excellent teams where they have like head of talent, and there's so much competitiveness also going on in the VC space. I think if they're even sort of trying to catch up to founders, it just kind of shows how much there is out there. At SVB, we have a separate VC team, so that's the team that will look after all relationships with VCs across the UK. And even though we have that, it's still tough to sort of say like that's our USP. Going back to what challenges I think founders face, one is getting investment, trying to get in front of VCs. I think you hear lots of big headlines saying so company has raised £50 million in their Series C, but I still think there's you're probably only hearing like 0.2% of companies who have raised. But there's still like hundreds of companies who are trying to find how to get an in with a VC. I think part of the problem with that is that VCs, they still have this very incestuous ecosystem where they only like to talk to their friends, and I think that's breaking down that barrier and like encouraging conversations. I think events, hosting events where you invite VCs to try and get them to step outside of their social network would be really helpful, and yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's about that, providing free and additional services or products. And just on that, I think one of the things that we often miss is when we're putting together a free trial or a free product, whatever it may be, and we're thinking, well, why wouldn't they take it? It's just actually how time poor these founders are, and actually they're thinking about having to invest their time to discover it and implement it and whatever else. So in their minds, it's just not free. But I absolutely agree that we should be looking at what else they're really struggling with and how can we help facilitate introductions or whatever it may be that's of real value.
Yeah, it's always a challenge because even when I was at KPMG, I would be introducing founders to VCs, and often I think the mentality of a VC is that if I haven't already seen it,
then it's probably not good enough.
Then it's not good enough. Actually, just some founders, they're not born with this, or they just don't have that network where they can rely on to introduce them to investors. There's a lot of diamonds in the roughs, I suppose. You don't have that.
Any other points on that sort of community piece? Anything else that's really liked?
I think you said something which really impacted me, where there is so much noise. Like, how do you help them cut through all the noise? And what channels are people using to reach their audience? Like, I know Vodafone, not to put you on the spot, but what channels are working for you in terms of reaching that target audience? And I'm in a similar situation where we're trying to go more upmarket. I'd love to know how you're going to help.
So we're doing a lot of work with Enterprise Nation, who have a small business community of sort of 500,000. So we're trying to go to places where they already are. So we started off trying to create a community and bring them to us and offer free things, and we're not getting the scale. We haven't got the perceived objectivity. So we're now taking the view to try and be where they are more, try and go to communities where they exist, try and offer. So with Enterprise Nation, we offer free training. So we've trained 100,000. Actually, we partnered with Cisco on some of this. We basically said we'll try and create free training modules on the basis of what your small business is telling us they need. So they started talking about cybersecurity. They started talking about connectivity, digital marketing. I mean, we don't sell anything for digital marketing. We're running a whole load of courses on how to do digital marketing. We're giving away free digital marketing vouchers at the moment. we don't sell them. It's a great benefit to Facebook at the moment, but it's all on the basis of we are taking a long-term view on it. We believe that trust is the primary commodity in the marketplace at the moment. We believe that if we can help and support, even if it's via other means, then that's a long-term bet for us, and we'll sort of win over the long term. But that, and as I talked about, what a lot of the small businesses are telling us is the authenticity and the sort of more scrappy type marketing. I mean, we do, and we're guilty of doing sort of a high investment in marketing, and sort of putting people like Stephen Bartlett out there on in his mansion. And someone was saying to me the other day, I just can't relate to that. I'm here in my little sort of Shoreditch flat, and you've got him on that. It doesn't relate to me. You need to get scrappy. You need to get more authentic. So we're looking at that as well. But it's how we use small businesses themselves. What we're finding is working for us is small businesses telling their small businesses to other small businesses, and then thinking, okay, that sounds like me. How do I find out what they're doing and get more? So. Yeah, that's kind of
has your strategy had to change recently with restrictions on data, retargeting, whatever else? Has that had much impact?
Yeah, it has actually, because building, and that's why we pivoted from trying to build our own community, because data and sort of GDPR and retargeting has made it really difficult to do it organically. You have to use people who are small businesses who have got large followership, who can talk to their communities. And so we would give them stuff, free stuff, and say, just talk about whether it's useful or not. If it's not, the risk is they go out and say it's absolute rubbish.
But that will come out anyway, right?
So it comes out anyway, exactly.
The world, you can't. We no longer control the narrative.
Exactly.
And that's the big change over the last 10 years.
Agreed. And that's the acceptance. You've got to accept. You try stuff out and you pivot if it's not working.
So we see, we also work with Enterprise Nation. We work with individuals like Holly and Co.
Yeah.
That sort of, so take it down, give them content and support content and a whole bunch of things, and let them actually manage and control the narrative within the network. I think that's because if you try to build a Vodafone or a Dell network, nobody trusts us. They're all going to look at it and go, "There's something in here. You want to sell us something." So community has to be a place of safety, a place of trust. You can go there. You can talk to if you want to talk to a technology vendor, talk to a technology vendor. If you come into a network that's managed by a vendor, they're the only ones that are going to be talking to you. And I think that level of, that authenticity, that word, I think is a really important one.
I think, just for us, it's a little bit of that, and then also just this admission that we don't have all the answers, and it's fine, and it's okay, and then that's why we want to bring the community and some of those startups on that journey with us to kind of help us find those answers.
The scrappy element that you're talking about, one thing we've started trialing out is like user-generated content, so filming ads on phones, and then we're getting a lot of success through like Instagram and Facebook advertising there with like a decent amount of budget, and we're also experimenting with TikTok advertising, which is really interesting to hear your BDR is going, oh, you saw us on TikTok, see again, like for us we're just like trying it out. Interesting what you were saying with Steve Bartlett. We're also working with him. We sponsored his live shows, which were honestly phenomenal. They were amazing. But on the other hand, we sponsored another podcast called the High Performance Podcast with Jake Humphries. Totally different audiences. Still haven't made up my mind as to which one was more valuable, in that like they both had such a cult following. But for us, we're just like experimenting, trying out new things to really raise our brand awareness in this market.
I think the idea of user-generated content is really interesting. We're looking at exactly the same, with the view being reciprocal pieces. They create content almost like day in the life type stuff. We'll put it on our platforms and give them the exposure, and then you give them access to a much broader audience than they otherwise would have. And we get more sort of content to share with the community, which is, okay, I see the problems they've got, that's what I'm experiencing. Because a lot of the feedback we get is, it's just nice to know someone else is having that problem.
I think these platforms are being overlooked. People don't take TikTok seriously, but actually there are a lot
Growth
of
rate's
business
massive.
people on there who go there for inspiration and things. So yeah.
It's interesting the reference though to the different channels that people are using, because historically people wouldn't have thought of those channels as business channels, whether it links to the gig type of entrepreneurial business setting up, or whether it's just the boundaries are sort of disappearing and the distinction between the two is changing. I don't know, but
it comes back to that educating the customer on that, doesn't it? And again, that's why TikTok partnered with us, was to educate founders on that very piece. So, look, this last hour has absolutely flown by. I feel like there are far more we could get into, but we're just about out of time. So what we will do is we'll make sure we'll connect you all on email so you can continue any conversations that started. I know obviously Tash is furiously writing down notes, so we'll share the sort of top learners from the day, so you've got that as well. But we're more than happy to continue the conversation as well. But thank you all for coming out. Thank you. This morning. Thank you. Please grab more food. There's so much.